Okay, let's take a look at the assignment for round 2P and see what the answers were there, at least the ones that I would have chosen. So first question was, in the low end, Baldwin had a huge disparity between actual and potential sales. What did it miss out on in terms of missed unit sales? Well, let's go take a look. So, oops, you know what? I'm still in round 3, so let me pause and get back to round 2. Shoot. So I jumped right down to the actual versus potential, and we're talking in the low end and Team Baldwin, okay, and it actually had 2 products, and that's not going to affect us here for this first answer, but it will in the second answer, and I'll get into that. I kind of threw you a little curveball that I really didn't intend, but oh well. So our potential market share for Team Baldwin in the low end, if you come down here to the total, it was 30.5%. So it could have kind of dominated that actually, but it only sold 15.3%. So it missed out on, doing the math in my head, 15.2% of the market. Okay, and of course you could use your calculator. Then we go back and we look at the total demand. And to do that, we've got to jump up to the low end. And our total unit demand was 11,179,000 units, and I represented it this way. I added the 3 zeros. You didn't necessarily have to. If you just did did the 11,179, that'd be fine. So I missed out on 15.2% of the market, and the market was 11 million. So the math's pretty simple. It's 15.2% times 11,179,000, and so what I missed out on was 1,699,208 unit sales. Okay, and obviously if you took off those zeros, you're probably going to just have 1,699, which would be okay. Okay, so that's it for the unit sales. That part's fairly easy. Now, missed dollar sales. This gets to be a little bit more complicated, a little more complicated than I wanted at this point in time, although it's the type of analysis that I'll expect by the end of the semester. And what do I mean by that? Well, BGEN's actual versus potential. So we got to go take a look at, again, the actual versus potential for those products. And if we take a look, and BGEN's actual was 12.5%, and its potential was 28.5%. So once again, I can do a little bit of that math, but remember my overall was 15.2%, but BGEN was actually 16%. So BGEN actually sold quite a bit less than it could have, whereas Baker, if you bounce just up, actually sold a little bit more. Okay, so it benefited, okay, because its actual was 2.8 and its potential was only 2, so it probably benefited some from BGEN's lack, but anyhow, that makes our math a little bit more complicated. Now, the simple thing would have been to take this 1.699 million missed sales and take it times the $19 sales price. If you did that, I'm probably going to give you most of the credit for the assignment. But the actual dollar amount's a little bit more complicated. So if you took BGEN's actual versus potential, it was 16%. So BGEN missed out on 1.788,640,000, or 1,788,640 units, and BGEN's sale price was $19. So it missed out on nearly $34 million in sales. Okay. Baker actually sold more than potential by 8%, so it sold an extra 89,000 units, and Baker's price was $23, so it counted for a net gain of a little over $2 million. So the overall net gain would be the difference between those two, actually, which is about $32 million. So again, if you took this, the 1.7 million times the 19, I'm probably going to give you reasonable credit for that. Maybe not full credit, but pretty close to full credit for that. So, What main factors contributed to Baldwin's low contribution margin? Okay, I want you to get used to me saying this. There's only two things that affect contribution margin. One is price. Two is variable cost. Okay, so a higher price is going to increase contribution margin. A lower price is going to decrease contribution margin. Okay, higher variable costs are going to decrease contribution margin. Lower variable costs are going to increase contribution margin. That's really it. Okay, in this case, for Baldwin, if we go and take a look at it, we'll see that I got to cruise up to this report. If you look along here, the pricing, you'll see that pretty consistently, right down the line, Baldwin's prices were a lot less. So Baldwin was taking an approach to have a lower pricing, hopefully sell some more. Okay, and it might have benefited from some sales as a result, but that was the main thing. It did have slightly higher labor costs in some segments, and so that certainly would have contributed somewhat to that as well. And what you'd have to do is look at the labor costs here. Its labor costs here are actually a little cheaper than Chester's, but a little more than there. And so you could certainly argue that, its labor costs here were a little bit higher actually. So now, so the main factor was pricing. And if you put that's more or less the correct answer. Okay, Ferris sold $7.5 million of stock. How many shares did that equal? Wow, if that's my question, that was a little bit of a confusing question. And its net was actually, I got to go back because I had the correct answer for this, and I'm going to change what I have here because I was just interested in what that stock was for the $7.5 million. And so let me redo my math here real quick. I think I'll pause real quick. When I started to answer that question, I made it a little bit more complicated myself than what I'd asked originally. But Ferris sold $7.5 million of stock. How many shares did that equal? Use the price at the beginning of the year, and the $7.5 million would equate to 183,150 shares. And where I went astray a little bit is that Ferris also, and I'm picking on Ferris, but Ferris also bought back some stock all at the same time. I got to get up here to the cash flow. Sorry. So they sold $7.5 million, bought back $1 million worth, which, again, that's not the brightest thing because you're paying money both ways. Your net there is $6.5 million, and that's what I had earlier was actually a net of $6.5 million. But that's not what my question asked for. So, and the net was 158,000 shares, something like that. Okay, and I'll probably give partial credit if you did it that way, since I goofed up and kind of did it that way too. But really, the $7.5 million would have generated 185,000. Would I come up with 183,150 shares? They would have bought back then at that same price. Okay, $1 million worth, or what's that? 20-some thousand shares, somewhere in that neighborhood, 24,000 or something like that, 25,000 shares that they would have bought back, to net it out. But the correct answer for that question would be that one. So what will total industry demand be for the traditional segment next round? This is good stuff to calculate each round, and you should do it for every segment, actually, because it gives you a better idea what you're looking at. It also means that you're paying attention then to what's going on, because it won't always be consistent. Okay, we might have a recession or something, but it's going to forecast those for us. So which segment did I say here? Traditional. So there we are. In the traditional segment, our demand this year is 8,776,000 units, and our growth rate's 9.6%. So the math is, the official way to write the equation would be 8,776,000 times 1 plus 0.096, which is the fractional way to say 9.6%. Not fractional, but the decimal way to say 9.6%. Okay, so doing the math, should come up with 9,618,000. Actually, they round up, because if you look at this year's, for round 3, it was 9,619,000. because they drop off the zeros, but they apparently rounded that up. So if you're one digit off, I'm not going to get too concerned about that. So, but hopefully you showed me the works and how you came up with the answer. Again, I added the zeros here, and you wouldn't necessarily have had to do that. That should be it for the round 2P assignment. Thanks for listening.